Tonight, former President Donald Trump is found guilty of all 34 counts of falsifying business records. How did the trial play out? Could he go to jail? And can he still run for president? Also tonight, Victoria Police agrees to a 9-day fortnight under a landmark new pay deal for cops. Landslide survivors march as PNG's Prime Minister flies into the disaster zone. And we'll get the latest from Adelaide ahead of the Matildas' final test before the Olympics. Good evening, Iskhander Razak with ABC News. Guilty on all counts. That's the verdict from a jury that's turned Donald Trump from a former commander-in-chief into a convicted felon. 12 everyday Americans voted unanimously in a historic hush money trial that's tested the resilience of the United States justice system. Leading our coverage tonight, North American Bureau Chief Jade McMillan, who's been following the trial in New York.
I'm outside the court where US history was made. Finally, a verdict in this case and a legal reckoning for a former president. But the political impact of this decision won't be fully understood until Americans vote in November. One of Donald Trump's last moments before becoming a convicted felon. It took a jury of 12 ordinary New Yorkers a day and a half to reach a verdict, declaring the former president guilty of all 34 counts of falsifying business records.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
The jury found Donald Trump falsified the records to cover up hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels on the eve of the 2016 election, to silence her claim of a sexual encounter a decade earlier and protect his campaign.
We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man.
Trump's lawyers will likely appeal against the verdict. His supporters echoed his argument that he'd been unfairly targeted.
I never voted for him the first time, but we'll do it this time. It's a disgrace.
Even if Trump goes to jail, gets out, or gets bail, or whatever, we're all going to vote for Trump still.
But others were overjoyed at the decision to make Donald Trump the first ever former US president convicted of a crime.
I don't expect him to go to jail, but a lie is a lie and a conviction is a conviction.
Trump is facing a potential prison term, but many legal experts expect the judge would take his lack of a prior criminal record into account and consider probation.
I'm so pleased that there's finally some accountability for Donald Trump.
The man who brought the case, Democratic District Attorney Alvin Bragg, insists it was handled like any other.
And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors.
But in a polarised America 5 months out from the election, the political impact is yet to be measured. President Joe Biden's campaign releasing a statement arguing no one is above the law. The only way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office is at the ballot box. Donald Trump's wife Melania was absent from the trial, so too his daughter Ivanka. But she posted to Instagram, "I love you, Dad." International reaction has been more tempered.
I obviously have, people might have observed, a close relationship with President Biden. We get on very well, but the relationship between Australia and the United States is a relationship between nations, not just between individuals.
Donald Trump will be sentenced in July, just days before he's expected to be confirmed as the Republican nominee. Donald Trump's conviction came after weeks of painstaking testimony of sex scandals, tabloids and cover-ups. A former ally turned against him, offering key evidence for prosecutors to secure their win in the hush money case.
From US president to convicted felon on 34 counts, Donald Trump's trial was a salacious and unpredictable affair. At its centre, whether the former president falsified business records to cover up a bribe paid to porn star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 campaign.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
96 random civilians were whittled down until 12 took their place in the jury. Each day drawing throngs of vocal supporters and opponents, as well as global media. The prosecution's witness list included everyone from political spin doctors to the former president's close friends. Among them, tabloid publisher David Pecker. He testified he'd been involved in a scheme burying news stories that could have damaged Mr. Trump's first run at the White House. When Ms. Daniels took the stand, she aired explicit details of their sexual encounter at the heart of the hush money payment, prompting the defence to call for a mistrial, a request the judge ultimately rejected. The prosecution's star witness, though, was Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal attorney and political problem solver. He told the jury the former president had known everything and had covered it up to protect his campaign. Testimony from a former right-hand man proving key to the conviction handed down in this courthouse in downtown Manhattan.
Perhaps more than anything, Donald Trump is a product of New York City. His brash demeanour and the kind of business approach many here would call hustle have also defined his life in the public eye. In New York, Donald Trump built his name. And today, 12 New Yorkers bestowed a new title, convicted criminal.
With 2 impeachments and civil trials finding him liable for sexual assault and fraud, this isn't the first time Donald Trump has made US political history for the wrong reasons, and it might not be the last. He still faces another 3 criminal cases, 2 relating to alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election result, and 1 over the handling of classified documents. But they're unlikely to go to trial before US voters choose their next president in November. Carrington Clark, ABC News, New York.
Well, Donald Trump has managed to galvanise support off the back of all of his criminal cases, easily winning the Republican nomination earlier this year. North America correspondent Barbara Miller joins me now from Washington. Barbara, Donald Trump is due to be officially confirmed as the Republican nominee just days after he's sentenced. How has the party responded?
Look, we've really seen top Republicans rally around Donald Trump. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, for example, saying it was a shameful day in American history, and that kind of sentiment echoed by many of Donald Trump's allies. But even those who have a more complicated relationship with the former president have come out in support of him. I'm thinking there of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, for example, saying that the charges should never have been brought. Not much room for dissent then, at least tonight. And in fact, when one well-known Republican, Larry Hogan, came out and said that the rule of law should be respected, he was immediately shot down by a top campaign official. What's going to be interesting is how this plays with the voting public. And polls have consistently shown that if he's actually convicted, that some Republicans would reconsider whether or not to vote for Donald Trump.
And what about Joe Biden's campaign? How's it playing this?
Well, we saw that very quick response from the Biden campaign saying that the verdict showed that no one was above the law, but also really trying to drive home the message that, felon or not, Donald Trump will be contesting this November's election. And the only way, they said, to keep him out of the Oval Office is at the ballot box. I think that's partly a call to Democrats to turn out in November, and that's amid concerns that Joe Biden is losing support among some key constituencies. Now, we haven't heard directly from Joe Biden today. He initially didn't comment on this trial. More recently, he's chosen to mock Donald Trump over it. And we saw that stunt this week from the Biden campaign where they sent Robert De Niro down to the courthouse. So I think there's still trying to work out how to play this. Now, of course, it's all about the money, and the Republican side is saying that one of their websites crashed because of the flow of donations coming in the wake of this verdict. That will be a concern if it's true to the Biden campaign, and something else, Jay, to watch over the coming days.
Barbara Miller in Washington, thank you. As Americans digest the verdict, there are major questions hanging over Donald Trump's campaign for the White House. Our Global Affairs editor John Lyons has more.
Donald Trump will be sentenced on the 11th of July. Each count carries a maximum sentence of 4 years. So prison time is possible, but legal experts believe it's highly unlikely.
Likely, Mr. Trump will receive a non-custodial term and possibly a fine and so forth.
Whether he ends up behind bars or not, Donald Trump can still run for president. There is a precedent. In 1920, the socialist candidate Eugene Debs ran from prison while serving a 10-year sentence. He got 3% of the vote. And what if Trump wins in November? Could he pardon himself? Not only is that power untested, it only applies to federal crimes, and this conviction happened in a state court. So that would leave him relying on the New York governor, and she's a Democrat.
There's still plenty to play out in the United States over the next 5 months as we get closer to the election. But for now, that's all from an historic day here in New York City.
Victoria Police has agreed to a landmark deal to introduce 9-day fortnights for officers, potentially bringing an end to a long-running pay dispute. The in-principle agreement was struck today and will see Victoria Police gradually phase in 9-hour shifts and 9-day fortnights by 2029. The deal will also include a 16% pay rise over 4 years. The Police Association says it's pleased by the agreement, which it says will keep its members safe at work. The Ballarat community will be saturated with anti-violence messages and more support services over the next 4 years to make women safer. The Premier Jacinta Allen today visited the regional city where 3 women were allegedly killed by men this year. Visiting Ballarat high school students, she says the project has successfully cut family violence rates in other countries. Geo-targeting technology and local social media influencers will also be recruited to help combat misogynistic content bombarding young people online.
Because we know technology and the use of social media and the spread of toxic content is a big part of the challenge before us right now. We heard it this morning from students. We hear it all the time.
The federal seat of Higgins in Melbourne's inner east, which includes suburbs such as Prahran, Malvern and Carnegie, is set to be abolished for the next election. Prime Ministers Harold Holt and John Gorton held the seat, as did Treasurer Peter Costello. Labor's Michelle Ananda Raja won the seat for the first time at the last election. Population changes mean Victoria is losing a seat to Western Australia. New Zealand's Prime Minister has expressed grave concerns about Australia's plan to change immigration policy following the latest controversy about visas. Australia regularly deports foreign-born criminals, which has frustrated New Zealand, as many deportees have spent most of their lives in Australia. Last year, the Albanese government directed tribunals to take into account ties to Australia when considering such cases. But that's about to be changed after revelations a string of foreigners convicted of serious, violent offences have remained in the country. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the change is in Australia's national interest, which has frustrated Wellington.
Raise in very clear terms our grave concerns about the change to that policy. You know, as we well know, it's not fair that actually we get deportees coming back to New Zealand that have got very little connection or no connection to this country. That's not right.
Victoria Police are investigating after pro-Palestine supporters vandalised offices belonging to state and federal Labor MPs in Melbourne. Red paint was thrown at the federal electorate offices of NDIS Minister Bill Shorten and Attorney General Mark Dreyfus in early morning attacks. State MP Kat Theophanous' Northcote office and the US consulate on St Kilda Road were also targeted. This morning, dozens of protesters rallied on Collins Street in Melbourne CBD to stage a lie-in at a defence conference attended by Victoria's Industry Minister Natalie Hutchins, as some activists clashed with members of the public. A rock climber has been rescued after falling off a cliff in Werribee Gorge State Park west of Melbourne. Paramedics were called to Falcons Lookout Walk in Ingliston at about 1:45 this afternoon. Authorities say the climber, believed to be in his 60s, had fallen 5 to 10 metres. He was taken to Royal Melbourne Hospital in a stable condition with suspected upper body injuries. Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister James Marape has made his first visit to disaster-hit Enga province since a landslide killed what's thought to be hundreds of people there. Villagers remain in mourning for loved ones buried under at least 6 metres of rubble a week ago. There's also growing concern that another landslide could hit the region. Thousands of survivors have been ordered to evacuate the disaster zone. Marape met officials tasked with disaster relief. Locals have criticised his government for a perceived slow response, with aid taking days to arrive. The Prime Minister has pledged to improve regional infrastructure in the wake of the disaster.
We learn from this experience to live with disaster, adjust, and we'll rise up, get going better, not just for West Enga, but for Enga, for the entire country. Former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann has lodged notice that he will appeal against a federal court finding that, on the balance of probabilities, he did rape Brittany Higgins at Parliament House in 2019. Bruce Lehrmann lost his bid to sue Network 10 and journalist Lisa Wilkinson over an interview with Ms Higgins on the project when Justice Michael Lee found 10 had proved its truth defence. He launched the defamation action after his criminal trial was abandoned with no findings against him. The notice lodged this afternoon comes as the federal court considers the final figure for costs awarded against Mr Lehrmann in the defamation case. No details have been released about the terms of the appeal. Hundreds of dangerous e-scooter riders have been handed fines in a 2-day blitz, with police warning the time for e-scooter leniency is over. People not wearing helmets, was the most common offence detected during the crackdown in Melbourne CBD last week. Fines were also handed out for other common offences, including riding on the footpath, running red lights and carrying a second person. Police say there's been a concerning rise in scooter-related injuries and people were frequently spotted breaking the rules.
The rules are quite clearly articulated what you can and cannot do. People choose to be either reckless or arrogant and oblivious, or both.
As cost of living pressures grow, Australia's hospitality industry is feeling the squeeze. One of Australia's top chefs says tiny profit margins are forcing many restaurants and cafes to close. Neil Perry is leading a new alliance of restaurant owners calling for more support to keep the multi-billion-dollar industry afloat.
Australia's restaurants are feeling the heat. The cost of doing business is rising and profits are being squeezed.
We're hearing 5, 3, 2% profit, and clearly because restaurants are going out of business, some aren't making any profit at all.
1 in 13 Australian hospitality businesses is predicted to fail in the next 12 months, according to financial services company Creditor Watch. And others, like celebrity chef Kylie Kwong, are choosing to exit the industry.
2024 has certainly been one of the hardest years for hospitality. Many businesses have said that they're closing because times are harder than they've ever been.
Business confidence is at an all-time low, and analysts say retail and hospitality are the hardest hit.
People are holding off from spending. I mean, you can go into retail, you can go into cafes and restaurants. People are holding off and they're not spending as much as they used to.
Now, a group of hospitality heavyweights has formed the Australian Restaurant and Cafe Association, and they plan to lobby Australian governments for measures like payroll tax reform, simplified industry awards and more skilled workers. The association's also calling for more direct measures like COVID-style dining vouchers to entice more people to eat out.
Anything that we can do as an association that long-term makes the industry more and more sustainable, that's our goal.
Hoping to avoid end of service for a $64 billion a year industry. Jessica Kidd, ABC News, Sydney.
Staying with finance, and it was a strong day for the local share market, while shares of Donald Trump's social media company fell after the former US president was found guilty in his New York criminal trial. Here's David Chow.
Well, right after Donald Trump was found guilty in his hush money trial, the odds of Joe Biden winning the next US election surged. But not by enough, as the odds still favour Trump getting his old job back, even in the unlikely event that he goes to jail. The guilty verdict also had an effect on the share price of his social media company, Trump Media, which dropped more than 6% in after-hours trade. But overall, he's still doing okay financially. If Trump Media were to be listed here, its $13.8 billion market valuation would make it the 38th biggest company on the ASX, just behind IAG and well ahead of Qantas, two companies which actually make money. Its share price has quadrupled over the past year, despite an $87 million loss last year and just $6 million in revenue. As you can see here, its share price is extremely volatile and driven mainly by sentiment towards Donald Trump himself, rather than actual fundamentals. Meanwhile, it's been a good day for the All Ords, which jumped 1% in a single session as investors bought the dip. But it's down 0.4% for the week after all those falls in the last few days. And Telix Pharmaceuticals, with its 15% surge, was the best performing stock after it announced positive test results from a trial of its prostate cancer drugs. Overseas, Wall Street fell 0.6%, while share markets in Europe and Japan rose. There was a big fall in oil and iron ore prices while gold was flat, and the Aussie dollar is buying 66.3 US cents. And that's finance.
The Matildas are back in action tonight, ramping up their preparations for the Paris Olympics with a two-match series against China. Reporter Brianna Fiore is at Adelaide Oval ahead of the first of those two friendlies. Brianna, we saw Australia fall in love with the Matildas last year. Has that hype flowed on to where you are right now?
It sure has, and the rain hasn't kept fans away tonight. People are streaming through the gates at Adelaide Oval to get a glimpse of the Golden Girls, with the Matildas and China set to kick off shortly. Now, the Matildas will be without star striker Sam Kerr, who has been sidelined with an ACL injury. Katrina Gorry will also miss tonight's game. Unfortunately for Kerr, she won't make it back in time for the Paris Olympics in just under 2 months' time, but Gorry still remains a chance. Now, this match is just a friendly, but there's a lot still at stake. Several of the Matildas players are looking to prove why they deserve a spot on the plane to Paris, with Australia only able to select a squad of 18. We spoke to some fans earlier, including some players from when the Matildas first started out.
I'm original Matilda from 1979. We started women's soccer in Adelaide.
I want to be a Matilda one day, and they're a big inspiration to me.
We really like girls and we're celebrating our mummy and mama.
I remember years ago there wasn't really many people in the crowds at all, and now suddenly it's a sold-out game tonight.
I think we might be going to watch a soccer match somewhere. Is that right?
Yeah. It's the 14th consecutive sold-out Matildas match on home soil, with one still to go in Sydney on Monday. And as you can see, fans of all ages just can't get enough.
Brianna Fiore, thank you very much. Carlton has kicked off round 12 of the AFL season with a 36-point win over Port Adelaide at home. Charlie Curnow added 3 more to his league-leading goal tally, but it was the captain, Patrick Cripps, who was the hero of the night, with 2 rapid-fire goals to kickstart the Blues' 8-goal final term. The win has moved Carlton into the top 4, while Port Adelaide remain 3rd on the ladder. And in injury news, Collingwood will be without Scott Pendlebury tonight against the Western Bulldogs at Docklands, who will miss up to 4 weeks with a bicep injury. This year's AFLW season will see teams play 11 games inside 10 weeks before the finals series begins. The schedule was released today. The competition kicks off with 2 Friday night matches on the 30th of August, the first between Sydney and Collingwood, followed by the West Coast Eagles hosting Richmond later that night. 8 games will be played midweek to account for the extra games added to the fixture. Australia's Alex de Minaur and Thanasi Kokkinakis are through to the 3rd round of the French Open. It comes as organisers clamp down on loud fans, with no more drinking allowed among spectators.
It's a familiar scenario for Thanasi Kokkinakis, with his back against the wall at a Grand Slam. The The world number 98 didn't give up after losing the first 2 sets against Italian Giulio Zeppieri. Kokkinakis delivered another epic comeback, which was his second 5-setter in a row. He sets up a reunion in the 3rd round with the powerful American 12th seed Taylor Fritz.
I've known Taylor for ages. We grew up together. We had the same management growing up. I've played him a couple of times. Obviously, he's had a great career and a very good player.
Australia's top-ranked star Alex de Minaur is through to the 3rd round for the first time at Roland Garros. He had a straight sets win over Spain's Jaume Munar.
Feels good. It feels like I've finally broken a barrier down.
De Minaur was asked to sign some wine glasses after the match, but they won't be seeing any action near the courts, with organisers banning the consumption of alcohol in the stands.
Oh, Djokovic is not happy.
Rowdy fans have been yelling at players during rallies. Belgium's David Goffin says someone threw gum at him.
I support a player standing up, against people who are disrespecting and heckling him.
Organisers hope the booze ban will keep the crowd in check over the remaining 9 days and appease the players. Bindi Bryce, ABC News.
Now for the weather, here's the magnifique Paul Higgins.
Merci, thank you so much, Isk. Well, it is the end of the month, and here is how Melbourne's weather has fared during the month. It's been dry, we don't have to tell you that. Even after 4 millimetres of rain last night, we had less than half of our normal rainfall. Temperatures were close to average, but one thing you might have noticed, we hardly had much wind because of those big highs sitting over the top of us. Melbourne might not have had much rain overnight, and a lot of the Western District and out here in Gippsland missed out as well. But in the northeast, a few spots notched up nearly 100 millimetres. In fact, Violet Town had 104 millimetres and at Mount Hotham 116 millimetres. Mount Hotham actually scored the trifecta because there were wind gusts there to 135 kilometres per hour, almost a record for this month, and they had the equal lowest temperature, 1 degree. That northwest cloud band that brought the rain, there it is way out there. It moved on pretty quickly, and we have a small trough that's moving through Victoria at the moment. That is bringing just a few showers to our south. Lakes Entrance and Orbost in the east reached 21 degrees. Mostly 3 to 5 millimetres of rain across Melbourne last night. We did get up to 11 millimetres though at Mount Dandenong, 9 millimetres at Ringwood and around 8 in Frankston. It was all forgotten though with today's sunshine and surprising warmth. You probably stepped outside and thought, I thought it was going to be cold. Well, it wasn't. We had a high of 18.4 at 2:50 p.m. and outside now it's still 14 degrees. Thick fog in Brisbane this morning disrupted flights and it was a bumpy ride into and out of Hobart with very strong winds because they had this deep low spiralling past the Apple Isle. There's that trough now crossing Victoria. Now, tomorrow, settled weather returns for us because we'll have this high ridging across the state. A low is likely to develop off New South Wales, and rain wrapping around that low is going to make for a soggy weekend in Sydney. East Gippsland could also benefit if that low drifts down towards us early next week. But there's a lot of uncertainty about that forecast at the moment, so don't get too excited. Tomorrow, Brisbane and Sydney will have some afternoon rain. There will be late rain in Perth, partly cloudy though in Canberra, Hobart and Adelaide. Well, back home, a few showers around tonight in the Mallee and the Northern Country. There they are there. And as you can see, there will be a shower or two still around in the south tomorrow morning. Or tomorrow during the day, actually. But there will be morning fog and frost patches across most of the state as the temperature plunges tonight, getting down to 1 in Horsham. Mostly sunny in the north, partly cloudy in the south, and there will be some snow showers above 1,400 metres. A westerly wind on the bay below 10 knots will become south to southeasterly in the afternoon. Strong winds on Gippsland's coasts. Well, do rug up, down to 7 in Melbourne City tonight, and maybe not quite a double doona night. 14 degrees tomorrow. That's 4 degrees colder than it was today. We'll have a mix of sun and cloud and a shower or two. And you can see there's still a few showers around Melbourne at the moment. We will have mostly light winds tomorrow. Partly cloudy on Sunday with a southerly breeze in the afternoon, 14. Monday, a medium chance of a shower, 14. Then there's a lot of uncertainty. So Tuesday, somewhere between 0 and 7 millimetres of rain, and on Wednesday, 1 to 15 millimetres. So keep watch on this space. A morning shower coming up on Thursday. It'll be cloudy on Friday, Isk.
Paul Higgins, thank you very much. That's it for this evening's bulletin. I hope you'll join me tomorrow night for the first day of winter. First day of winter from 7. Until then, good night.